I'll tell you a little story of a dream I had once, which also serves this question, what if it's all perfect? And in this dream, it was a really cosmic, mystical dream. I was taken into a circular room that had like a um, mosaic or a collage of scenes on the walls all around the room in a circle. And as I got closer and looked at all of those pictures, they were actually little videos that were playing of moments of my life. Some, the tiniest little moments, some huge, major things like my dad's death. I just looked and looked, and there was everything. My whole life was on display here on these walls as I walked around the room. And what became apparent to me is that all of these videos of my life fit together side by side as if they were made to go together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And when I saw that, I realized, like, somehow each thing had its own important place. Each thing that happened in my life belonged here because it was part of the puzzle, was part of the jigsaw puzzle. And in order for other things to have happened, that piece had to be there. It was important. And in the dream, I turned to this old man who was showing me around the room, and I said, I see it now. It was all perfect. Every single thing was perfect in its own way. Even the things that I hated, even the things that caused me pain, the things I wished I could get rid of in my memory, every single thing had a place. Every single thing was perfect. And I said, gosh, if I had only known this sooner, like years ago, I never would have worried so much about life and how it was unfolding. And the old man put his finger on my lips and said, no, no, even the worry was perfect.
Welcome to Caritas Consciousness Project. I'm Gloria Quillu, and Caritas is dedicated to promoting the evolution of consciousness as the key to individual growth and global healing. We draw from a wide assortment of both ancient wisdom and leading edge studies in science, consciousness, spirituality, healing, and philosophy. And in addition to our online presentations with guest speakers, we offer classes and study groups also online on Zoom. And we have about 150 video recordings, which you can access on our website, which is caritascenter.org, or on our YouTube channel, which is Caritas Consciousness Project. As a nonprofit organization, we rely on the support of our members and donors to keep Caritas going. So if you'd like to support our program, you can make a donation or become a member on our website. And now let me introduce tonight's guest speaker. Dr. Karen Wyatt is the best-selling author of the book 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying, which is an excellent book. It contains stories of patients she cared for as a hospice doctor and the spiritual lessons she learned from them at the end of their lives. Her other books include The Journey from Ego to Soul and Stories from the Dark Night and The Tao of Death. Dr. Wyatt also hosts End of Life University podcast, which features conversations with experts who work in all aspects of end-of-life care. She's widely regarded as a thought leader in the effort to transform the way we care for our dying in the U.S. And her website is www.eoluniversity.com. Welcome, Karen. Thank you so much for making time to be with us this evening.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here and to have a chance to just share with everyone, and especially with a group that's devoted to the evolution of consciousness, because I don't always get to speak with so many like-minded people who have that same focus. So for me, this is a real honor to get to be here. And
So,
I guess I should go ahead and start sharing this slide.
sure, sure.
I have a PowerPoint, I'm sorry. But
Oh, don't apologize. It's great.
best way to get the message across when you can actually read what I'm talking about at the same time or see pictures of it. So let's see. There we go. Oh, I gotta go back one. So yeah, so this is 7 lessons for living from the dying, which is taken from the book that I wrote and has some additional touches added to it, particularly in light of where we are right now in our world, in our society, and things that we're experiencing. Not that I'll talk about those individual events, but this is a particularly potent time when those of us who are aware of our own consciousness need to really dig in and need to really be devoted to our practices and to moving through the world with intention and higher consciousness as much as possible. So I'm going to add some thoughts around that. And my basic thinking for this presentation is, how do we navigate the suffering that exists in our current world and find inspiration for spiritual growth so that we can keep growing and not get pulled down or torn apart by what is happening around us. And I feel that there might be times when we need a new perspective and we need wisdom. We definitely need deep wisdom to help us get through these times. And the reason I talk about lessons from the dying is because that has been my own journey and how I have come to spiritual awareness myself. Though I started out in my teens with having a revelation that love is what really matters in life. I
Mm.
didn't really understand what that meant. I just had an aha moment, kind of a mystical experience that told me that. And I brought that idea of bringing love to patients in my medical practice, that I would love every patient that I saw, and that would actually be the best possible way to bring healing to them. But early on in my medical career, a tragedy happened when my father, who was one of the people I loved the most in the world, died by suicide. And his death shattered me completely in every way, but also spiritually, because here I had this belief in love and that love could heal people. And yet my love for my father could not heal him. And I was really broken for a while by my grief over his death and my guilt and my doubts about all of my previous spiritual existence. And I got an intuition one day that I needed to work in hospice because I knew nothing about death and dying or grief. And I got this intuitive hit that I needed to become a hospice volunteer, which I did. I followed that lead and became a hospice volunteer, and very quickly was made the medical director for a hospice. I discovered that it was the most powerful work I could ever do, completely life-changing for me. And it led me out of the dark place that I was in to a higher spiritual plane, just by sitting with people who were dying and listening to their stories and learning from them. So ultimately, all this inspiration I got from stories led me, I started collecting their stories and the things they actually asked me, would you teach what I have learned to other people, because you'll still be here and I won't be here to tell my story. So I started collecting my patients' stories and really contemplating the spiritual lessons I was learning. And over time, that led to the book that is now published as 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying. And so I wrote that a while back and I have updated it one time. But it turns out the book I wrote in the past about my hospice experience after my dad's death is really a book that's helpful right now to all of us as we're figuring out how do we get through these challenging times. So for me, working with the dying helped me put the pieces together. As I said, I was shattered in so many ways. And sitting with the dying, people who were facing their own end of life, facing grief and loss, sitting with them every day gave me this deeper spiritual awareness that I needed in order to get my own life back on track. So I want to share my thoughts a little bit about why the dying are such good teachers for right now, for today, and what we're experiencing today. And the first thing that I'm aware of is the dying have had their eyes opened in a sense to a different perspective on life. Suddenly, they have no future to look ahead to. They are able to turn around and look back at life, but oftentimes see the patterns of life and have a higher perspective on what life has all been about now that they're approaching the very end, as they're having to let go of everything. They have this new vision that they've never had before, and I realize the power of that perspective could change everything, and that we who are here right now going through these experiences today could benefit by having a new and higher perspective on the things that we're experiencing. And in my book, I share the idea of the garden, the view from the garden and the view from the galaxy, whether we're looking at day-to-day life on the ground level or looking at it, excuse me, looking at it from a higher perspective. But for this talk, I borrowed um, an analogy from Carolyn Mace, who's one of my favorite teachers. And she talks, because I think this is something, this is an image we can keep in our minds. It's as if we're in a high rise apartment building in a huge city surrounded by other high rise buildings. And she said it makes all the difference whether you're looking out the window on the ground floor or from the penthouse or the rooftop from the highest point of that building. It makes all the difference in what you're able to see. And think about it. If you're on the ground floor, you're seeing, you're seeing cars and people walking and trash cans, and you're seeing people yelling at each other. You're seeing the day-to-day struggles of life. You're thinking about the bills you have to pay and the laundry that needs to be done and the dishes in the sink, and wondering how you'll get through from day to day. That's the focus. And around you, when you look out, you see other tall buildings and you see other people on the ground floor who are looking out at the same view that you're seeing. And some of us are actually really stuck at that ground floor view. We can't, there are lots of people in our world today who can't see anything other than the ground floor view. That's all they look at every day. That's all they're aware of about life, this ground floor view. But there's also this, what Carolyn calls the penthouse view, and I call the galaxy view, when we can rise up and transcend above all of the emotions and the ego at the ground level and look out and see the big picture. And we look out and see, oh my goodness, like I didn't realize there are these beautiful rivers and there's an ocean and there are mountains and there are parks and forests. Like this is incredible. Like there's so much more here than I even realized, than I could even imagine. And my little ground floor view is minuscule compared to this view from the penthouse. So I like to think of it that the penthouse view is actually the view of our higher self or soul that can see the big picture, that's able to take that vantage point in. The ground floor view is our lower self, the ego mind, and how it perceives the world on a day-to-day basis. And as I said, many people live on the ground floor and they don't even know that a penthouse view exists. They may never have experienced it. Some of us may have intermittent times when we're able to get to that higher place and take that higher viewpoint, but we may not stay there for long and we end up going all the way back down to ground floor. And so I wanted to make you aware of this. For me, this image of kind of going up and down the elevator inside this building has actually really helped me, because sometimes I stop and think, wait a minute, I'm on the ground floor right now. I got to get myself up. I got to get up higher to look at this situation. And right now, the ground floor that we're living on right now is very challenging. It is full of negative emotions, full of hatred and fear and anger, and it can suck us in and pull us down and exhaust us completely if we get too engaged in it. And yet, we don't want to try to escape what's happening in the real world and just be up in the penthouse, because then we're not really living on planet Earth. We're not really living the life that we came here to live. We need to be able to see both views and know how to hold them together. And I will point out, if you have people in your life who primarily live at the ground floor, and you try to talk to them about what you see from the penthouse, they will not understand you. They may never have seen it, and they will also probably not even believe you that it's possible that there is such a view of life and of the world that you have seen. And that can be a frustration for us, because we so desperately want to tell other people what it looks like if you can just get up to the penthouse and see. We want to offer that to them, but everyone has to get there on their own path in their own way. And I'm going to be talking a lot today about ways we can help ourselves take the elevator up to the higher level. And maybe those are things we can teach to other people who are trying to get there, trying to see from a higher perspective, but might need some assistance with that. So the goal, honestly, it's not to get rid of the ground floor view. We have to live there. We have to live in the world. The goal is to bring the big picture view with us down into our everyday ground floor life, so that as we walk through the world, we're aware there's a different way of seeing all of this. There's the big picture, there's the penthouse, there's the galaxy view. And at any time, I can slip into that higher view, and it will help me. It will help me stay calmer. It will help me feel more loving. It will help me get through these times. But I'm not trying to escape what's happening. It's essential that we live where we are right now in this world, on this planet, if we want to help make change come and transformation. So what inspired me so much about being around the dying is that they have faced the greatest crisis of knowing my days are numbered. I will not be here, and there are no more miracles to be had. I'm walking this path and I'm getting closer and closer to the very end. They face the crisis, and yet they still manage to find new growth at the very end of life. And a lot of the stories I share in the book are about that, how people have managed to find healing and greater love and forgiveness and amazing connections just before they die. And that gave me so much hope that it doesn't matter how dire our circumstances are, there's always the possibility of growth. And even the person that we think is the most entrenched in hatred and anger, that person can transform and can change. So it helps me hold on to hope that new growth is possible no matter how bad things seem. And I always think of, the butterfly, that for the butterfly, transformation begins with things falling apart. This was a saying, what the caterpillar calls the end of the world, because, of course, the caterpillar um, weaves a chrysalis, a cocoon around itself, and then dissolves, completely dissolves inside in order to form the butterfly. And I think sometimes we ourselves might be in the middle of the cocoon, in that state of dissolving away, and perhaps A lot of our society and civilization is going through that state where things are dissolving before our very eyes and falling apart completely. And you could imagine from the caterpillar perspective, that is a disaster. That is a tragedy. But from the butterfly perspective, that is a necessary step for the new growth that's going to happen, for what is going to come and the beauty that's going to emerge in the world. So I remember the penthouse view and the butterfly during times when I need some hope, and I need to remember, hey, it never feels good to be inside the cocoon when everything's dissolving and falling apart because you can't see what's on the other side of it and you don't know. But we have to trust. We have to trust that we have all these images in nature and in our world of transformation, metamorphosis, emergence that tell us that's actually how things work in the universe. And we have to keep a hold of that perspective and that approach. And something else I like, Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching says, to attain knowledge, add things every day, meaning study and learn something new every day. That's how you gain knowledge. But to attain wisdom, remove things every day. When I read that, I thought, oh, wow, that is why hospice patients at the very end of their lives seem so very wise because they have lost so much. They have had so much removed from them, all of the superficial things, all of the things that are not that important, that matter. They've had to lose their health. They've had to lose their functioning, their career, their what they used to find meaningful in their lives, sometimes their relationships. But as they approach death, they're actually discovering on this wisdom journey they're on what really matters in life. Because they've lost everything else, what is left for them is what really matters, the things that are most important in life. That's why there's such incredible teachers. If you ever have a chance to be with someone at the end of life, and I won't say that that's 100% every single person, at the end of life. Because as I said before, we're all on our own journeys and our own paths. So not everyone reaches this place where they have these experiences of gaining wisdom at the end of life. But if you have a chance to sit with people who are dying, you will meet these wisdom path people who are growing and learning even at the very end of life. So I'm going to share with you the 7 lessons that I learned from dying patients. And then after that, I have some thoughts about certain practices we can do, but also what we should focus in on right now to kind of help us as we're trying to keep our elevator moving up to that higher floor when we need it, and to help us be more able to get up to our higher consciousness when we need that perspective just to get through whatever is happening on a day-to-day basis. So the very first lesson that I include, and the first thing that I understood as I started working with dying patients, was that the lesson of suffering and that life is full of difficulties and necessary losses. And I was struggling with my dad's death because I didn't know that. I didn't know that before. I didn't know that it's just part of life, that we are going to lose things and lose people, and we're going to feel pain, and there will be, I call it suffering. Some people don't like that word because they feel like suffering is a choice, but I call it suffering because I lump a lot of things together under it: loss and pain and just challenges and difficulty. But it's really built into the universe that life is hard. It takes effort and it takes work in order to be here. And so sometimes we feel on our spiritual path that we don't want to say that. We feel like maybe life should be blissful and our spiritual path helps us be blissful. But the reality is, on the ground level, there are big challenges, and it's hard to live on the ground level. We need our higher consciousness for sure, and that helps us get through all of that. But we have to accept and embrace the idea that there are necessary losses and necessary difficulties in life. And how we navigate the difficulties, the journey before us is actually the key to transformation. And so it means everything that we're able to say, oh, well, that's okay. This is part of my journey. It's going to be hard. I'm going to face some things that I may not like and that may be hard for me, but this is the journey I'm on. This is what life is bringing me. And that's actually how we will find our way to transforming that suffering into something much more beautiful and much more powerful. So it's important to be able to embrace the dark times of life and embrace being in the cocoon, embrace the idea that things are dissolving around us right now, and have some curiosity about that rather than despair. Like, isn't this interesting that this is happening right now? So much is happening all at once, all around me. That's really interesting. And here I am. I'm here. I exist here while this is happening. And ask questions like, well, hey, why us? Why are we here right now on this planet as we're going through this at this time? And also, what opportunities might lie within this experience of dissolving away? What could be there? What else could happen? What could come about on the other side? What is possible? So when we approach it with that curiosity, it puts us in a different frame of mind and also at a different energy level, because suddenly we curiosity brings us a little bit more excitement than and interest than despair does. So it's important that we can pull ourselves out of the fear and find something positive we can look for in the experiences that we're having. The second lesson that I learned, hand in hand with learning about suffering, is about love. And every one of my hospice patients talked about love in their lives and how important it was, and how some of them had ignored love throughout their lives, didn't think that it mattered or was important at all. Some of them really regretted that in their last days, and they were scrambling to reconnect with people that they had known from the past. They were scrambling to find love again and to bring in the people they cared about that they may have neglected or may have just cast aside and that decided that weren't important to them. And so my patients showed me that inspiration I had back when I was 16, that love is the most important thing we can focus on in life. My patients validated that for me, that of all the lessons, all of them were looking at love and trying to understand how to feel more love, how to be more loved in their lives. And so, what I needed to learn is the importance of loving yourself and loving your life, for one thing, because so often on a spiritual path, we focus on the love that we send out to others. And part of our own journey is to figure out, how do I just love me, who I am, and how I showed up here on this planet with all these flaws and all these weaknesses and challenges. How do I love all of that? And how do I love my life that has unfolded the way it has, even though it hasn't been perfect, and things, I'm disappointed with certain things and I didn't accomplish certain things, but how do I love my life and love myself just as they are, without rejecting it and without wanting to leave any of that out or wishing that it had never happened. And so we love ourselves, we focus on the relationships around them. I advocate keep those relationships healthy now if you can, because you will want them to be healthy when you're at the end of life. It will be so important to you. So whatever you can do to maintain your relationships now in a healthy way will have a big payoff at the very end of life. And a reminder is this, that joy is the gift of love and grief is the price of love. The price we will pay for loving people more deeply and more broadly in our lives is that we will experience more grief. That's what happened to me. I got thrown into the depths of grief when my dad died. And yet that was the path to spiritual transformation. That very path of grief is what helped me grow and learn. And so in our lives, we need to learn how to carry our grief with grace. Be aware of grief, hold it in one hand while we're holding love and joy in the other hand, hold them together and acknowledge the grief that's there. Our society tends to cover up grief and reject it, to hold it as taboo, and sometimes even to shame people who admit that they're grieving. And grief is one of our most powerful teachers. We need to be able to hold it because it's an aspect of love. And carry it, carry the pain of grief as you go through life. From the penthouse or the galaxy perspective on love, the message that comes through loud and clear is that we are all connected to one another. There is no person, there's no group that is left out. All of us are connected, and we can't deny that. And that is something that so many people living at that ground floor level cannot see that reality. But from the penthouse or the galaxy, it is one of the clearest things you can see. Everyone here is connected. We all carry this life force within us. We were all created from this loving force that brought life into existence in the universe. And Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, "We're all connected. When you touch one thing, you are touching everything." And that tells us the other value of remembering that we're all connected is that you don't have to set your sights on how do I heal the world? It's vast and there are billions of people here. How do I go about healing the world? You can focus only on your own place where you are. Touch one life of one person around you. Give love to even in even one situation, and you're making a difference. You're touching everything. Another thing to be hopeful about, we can do small things that will make a big difference in the world. So the question we ask is, how can I bring more love to the world? What could I offer? What do I have? How can I show up in a way that adds to the love in the world instead of to the anger and the hatred and fear in the world? So, along with love comes the third lesson, which is forgiveness. And it makes perfect sense because everyone and everything that we love will at one time or another disappoint us. We will be hurt by those we love. That's just part of life again. That's part of the suffering that's built into this formula of life. And again, with my hospice patients, one of the things nearly all of them were struggling with was how to forgive. Some of them told me stories of people in their lives they hadn't spoken to for 20 years. And all they cared about in the last 2 weeks of life was, how do I forgive that person and how do I get them to forgive me? We spent a lot of our time listening to these stories, talking to people, even helping them get in touch with people from their past, helping them have conversations with people they needed healing with, and talking to them about how forgiveness happens and how it's possible to forgive. And the idea is that we let go of the bitterness and anger that we're holding on to from the past, of something we feel shouldn't have happened, that wasn't fair or right. Um, and we wish had never happened. We have to let go of the bitterness and anger in order to forgive. And I'll tell you that at the ground floor level, the ego has a terrible time with forgiveness. The ego doesn't really believe in forgiveness until we teach the ego and train it about forgiveness. The ego thinks that forgiveness is ridiculous. Why would you let someone off the hook who hurt you? And this is probably one of the things we have to struggle with the most in our lives, is working through forgiveness and figuring out, how do we do it? How do we let go of this bitterness and anger? Because it will pull us continually down to lower levels if we don't. Our anger will take us right back down to the lowest view of life and the world. if we don't find a way to let go of it. And I'm not saying that we forget what happened to us. I'm saying that we just view it from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, and we find a way to carry it that doesn't do harm to us. And so we have to focus on just releasing ourselves and other people from blame. It's this idea of just setting everyone free and setting myself free. It doesn't serve me to hold on to all these negative emotions. And I'll tell you a little story of a dream I had once, which also serves this question: what if it's all perfect? And in this dream, it was a really cosmic, mystical dream. I was taken into a circular room that had like a um, mosaic or a collage of scenes on the walls all around the room in a circle. And as I got closer and looked at all of those pictures, they were actually little videos that were playing of moments of my life. Some, the tiniest little moments, some huge, major things like my dad's death. I just looked and looked, and there was everything. My whole life was on display here on these walls as I walked around the room. And what became apparent to me is that all of these videos of my life fit together side by side as if they were made to go together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And when I saw that, I realized, like, somehow each thing had its own important place. Each thing that happened in my life belonged here because it was part of the puzzle, it was part of the jigsaw puzzle. And in order for other things to have happened, that piece had to be there. It was important. And in the dream, I turned to this old man who was showing me around the room, and I said, I see it now. It was all perfect. Every single thing was perfect in its own way. Even the things that I hated, even the things that caused me pain, the things I wished I could get rid of in my memory, every single thing had a place. Every single thing was perfect. And I said, gosh, if I had only known this sooner, like years ago, I never would have worried so much about life and how it was unfolding. And the old man put his finger on my lips and said, no, no, even the worry was perfect.
Mhm.
And that dream has informed me so much through the rest of my life to stop and remember, wait, wait. What if it's all perfect in some way that I cannot see right now? I do not know. I have no idea why this happened, what it's about, but what if it has a place? What if it fits in this mosaic, this jigsaw puzzle of my life, and I won't be able to see it, not now, not for a long time. I'm just going to have to live with that hope that one day I'll get it. I'll get where it fits in and why it was perfect. And that has helped me. It stopped me in my tracks so many times when I've started to complain, to say, wait a minute, what if it's all perfect, but I just can't see it right now? I can't see it. And it helps me let go a little bit with this trust that maybe one day I will. Maybe one day that will be clear to me. So the next lesson that I started to learn about was the lesson of presence, being in the present moment. And it occurred to me as soon as I started practicing forgiveness, I was actually freeing up more of my energy, my bandwidth, my attention span that had been tied up in the past, ruminating and thinking constantly about things that happened to me that I was unhappy about, that seemed unfair, that I didn't like. I was constantly recalling those old memories with some part of my brain was keeping those alive and stewing them over, going over them. Not that I was doing that consciously every day, but there was like this motor turning within me all the time that was keeping all those old negative memories alive. And as soon as I started practicing forgiveness and just releasing and letting go of the past, I found that I suddenly had so much more attention and energy available for the present moment. Until that happened, I honestly didn't understand what the present moment was. To tell you the truth, I didn't quite know meant by that, what they even meant by be present right now. And I thought, well, obviously I'm present. I'm here. My body's here. What do you mean? What do you mean? And it was one day my husband and I, we were out for a really nice dinner in a very fancy restaurant. And my mind was going over a list of things that I had to do the next day. And I looked up at my husband and I said, this is such a nice place. We should come here someday. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm here. I'm here right now, but I'm not here. My body's here. My mind is in tomorrow, trying to figure out what my schedule will be tomorrow. And that's the moment when I got, oh wow, the present moment is when I'm not feeling resentful about the past or worrying about tomorrow, but I'm actually here eating the food and enjoying the restaurant and being in this restaurant. It was this dawning light. I'm almost embarrassed to say it because that's probably obvious to everyone else, but to me, until I had that experience, I didn't quite recognize that I was completely missing the beauty of this present moment and what it's like to just bring all my attention and my focus and energy to each moment. But my hospice patients, they, because they had so little future left, they cherished every single moment, every moment. And when I spent time with them, it was so obvious to me the things that I would walk into the room, and one of my patients, I have a picture of a squirrel here. He had spent hours that day watching a squirrel that was building a nest in a tree, and it was on his deck gathering up dead leaves and pine cones and pine needles and carrying them up the tree to its nest. And he just watched the squirrel. And when I got there, I had my list of questions I needed to go over, my agenda of what I wanted to do. And he just shushed me and said, let's watch the squirrel right now. And he brought me into that moment and I sat with him and we watched the squirrel until it went away. It was done. And then it was time for us to go ahead with my agenda. But that was such a rich experience to be able to sit side by side with him and just be in the moment and watching the squirrel. And another patient described to me an ice cream cone she had eaten the night before. And she had savored that ice cream so much, I realized I don't know if I've ever experienced ice cream in the way that she did, because she tasted every drop and every morsel of it and loved it, because she said to me, that might be the last ice cream cone I will ever eat. Now I realize any one of us could have that realization right now today, like, this might be the last Zoom call I'm ever on. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. Life is fleeting and short. But when you know you have a terminal diagnosis and you see your body dissolving away every day, it's a reality. This may be the last sunset I see. That I spent so many times watching sunsets with my patients because that was their ritual every day, to watch the sun go down. And I learned that as a practice from them, the beauty of just being aware with nothing else on the agenda and watching the sun go down. So these little moments that were so precious to my patients became precious to me. And I began to understand how being in the present moment, you end up, the more you are in the moment and celebrate these little joys and little things that you never thought to enjoy before, the more your whole life begins to seem meaningful in such a powerful way. And here I call them new joys because sometimes, watching a squirrel was not something I had thought of as a joy before, but it became a new joy. And so maybe we can discover new joys even while maybe we're losing some of the old joys we used to find. They're not available to us right now, but it's a time when we can cultivate new joys. So that is from a higher perspective, how we really embrace and live in the present moment and the power of it. Because love only exists in the present moment. We can only share love and cultivate it in the present moment. So we have to find our way there, find our way to be present in order to have these spiritual experiences. After learning about the present moment, I began to hear my patients talking about and asking questions about what was the purpose of their lives. And many of them felt a little bit distraught at that question because they weren't sure that they had done enough with their life. They weren't sure that their life had accomplished anything. And it was very important to them to do a life review and sit back and think about what had they brought to the world, what had they done with their lives. And I saw people struggling with that, and it actually um, made me feel a little bit nervous, like, oh gosh, am I going to wonder, like, did I make the right choices? Have I done the right things? I wondered about my dad who ended his own life prematurely. Did he fulfill his purpose, or did he abandon all of that when he died? I struggled with this idea of what is our purpose. And it occurred to me then that from the ground level view, our purpose ends up being what we do on earth. Our ground level purpose is, what are we doing here? What did we accomplish? What jobs did we have? What career did we have? What did we bring into this world? But there's something so much greater than that, and that is, who are we in this world? Who did we become? And so that purpose is not what you have or what you accomplish, the real purpose of existence, but it's actually who you are, who you can become, how you grow to become your highest self. And I didn't mention it, but the previous slide talked about life being a classroom. And that's something that occurred to me again as I listened to my patients talk about finding meaning in life and finding their purpose, is that if we do view our lives as a classroom and we actually came here to learn things, we're always fulfilling our purpose as long as we're learning new things. It doesn't really matter what job we have or career. It's about what we can learn and how we grow in our consciousness. And so in this classroom of life, we have a curriculum that kind of unfolds before us as we're living from day to day. And our curriculum is completely different than anyone else's. The things that we came here to learn may not be the same at all as what someone else is working on or learning. We have to recognize that we're on our own unique path here of learning and growth. And yet there are some basics, like I'm talking about today, of love and forgiveness, that all of us need to learn, but we will learn them in our own way. We need to learn the concepts and the practices, but we will learn them in our own way. And life will bring us the curriculum. It will bring us the path toward learning those things. And that's part of what those hardships of life are about, the challenges that we go through. They're actually helping us become our best and highest selves and become who we were meant to be. And so our question from the higher perspective is, how can I just be my best self? And maybe I had always hoped that that I would do something amazing in my career and win a certain award, but I didn't accomplish that. Well, it doesn't really matter. Was I on the path toward being my best self, toward being who I am meant to be? It doesn't matter what I accomplish as much as how I grow on the interior and how my consciousness has grown. And so, even to ask my best self, I think of that as our highest consciousness self, is the best self that we can be. So, again, it's not about what we do or accomplish or have or own as much as it is about who we are and how we're growing and learning and transforming. And the next lesson, and I should emphasize again, all of these are lessons that are prominent in all spiritual traditions. When you look at them, throughout all spiritual teachings, we hear about love and forgiveness and surrender and presence and purpose. So this is nothing new. But it is utilizing those same spiritual concepts in a way that it's not necessarily tied to a particular religion, but the way the lessons were, for me, the way they were approached by my patients and then applied by me to my life. So, surrender, that's a powerful spiritual lesson in many spiritual traditions. The idea of being able to go with the flow of life instead of working against it. And again, John Kabat-Zinn's quote about you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to surf, because if you ever watch someone surfing, the whole art and skill of surfing is to learn how to stay balanced and flow with the wave and go where the wave is carrying you instead of fighting the wave. If you start to fight it, you'll fall off. And so it's learning how to read the wave and feel into it and move the way you need to move to keep your balance with the wave. And that's a really beautiful image to me in my mind, that life is kind of tossing us around back and forth, and these waves may come at us in our lives. And if we try to prevent the wave or stop it or wish it wasn't there, it will be a futile waste of energy. We're so much better off if we figure out, how do I make the most of this wave? How do I travel as far as I can on this wave and stay afloat and balance with it? And so when we understand that life itself, we're all connected, and then life has its own flow of things, its own flow. And maybe we're going through kind of a negative flow right now. That's where we're being taken, and it's a little alarming and frightening to us, but that's the flow right now. That is what's happening. It's happened over and over throughout history, throughout time. And so when we allow ourselves to, okay, I'm here for the ride, I'll go along with it. Try to I'm not going to try to stop this as much as I am going to try to figure out, how do I ride this and then remember all the other lessons to keep loving and forgiving and stay present. If I can remember all of those things in the middle of this flow, wherever it's taking me, that's my best chance at staying afloat. And I'm not saying, again, that we shouldn't um, stand up when something hurtful is being done to another person. I'm not saying going with the flow means that we just lay down, because there is a place for speaking out. There's a place for, in love, protecting others from harm when we can. And when it's in our purview and it's in front of us in our lives, that's part of love. The fierceness of love is to be able to step forward and protect wherever we can, but we still are acting out of love. When we do that, when we protect another person, we're acting out of love. We're not acting out of hatred or fear. So the idea is that we learn to ride the waves. We focus on the things that we are able to control, and we have to have a lot of discernment here. We have to be able to look at certain events or certain things happening and say, that isn't mine to change. I can't do anything about that, but here's what I can change. Here's what I could do to make sure we put our energy and our time behind the things that could actually make a difference. And so I think it's important. Each one of us has to think that through. For me, what's one thing I could do that would change something or make a difference around me in a positive way? And remember, whatever action we choose needs to come from our love rather than from hatred or from fear. So again, ride the waves, focus on what you can control, and develop your discernment so that you can recognize when something is not for you to try to fix. It's too far beyond any power that you have. But here are the things that you could change and could make a difference. And another aspect of surrendering in this way is that we start to release attachments to how things were, how things used to be, because that's another thing that happens on the lower level, the ground floor view, is we can look really lovingly on what was yesterday, how was it before, I liked it so much when it was like that, why are we not doing it that way anymore, why can't we have that again, I just want to go backwards, I want it to be the way it was. There's a lot of people at ground level consciousness who are operating with that in mind. They hope that we could reverse things, go backwards in time, do something the way it was done before, which doesn't really happen, isn't really possible as much as people try to force that to happen. But for us who can get to higher consciousness, we need to remember we can't stay attached to how things were, because that prevents new things from arising. If all our energy is going into the past, we don't leave enough energy and love for transformation, what's new and what wants to come to the surface. So we have to stay balanced there and let go of our attachments, grieve over what has been lost, what we wish we still had, how we wished it could be, grieve that loss, feel the pain of that, but still move forward with love. And so the last of the lessons, the seventh lesson, really in some ways underlies all the other lessons. And this is such a powerful teaching from Buddhism about impermanence and just mortality awareness. But the word impermanence just really stuck with me, and I loved it. And I loved being able to think that way, that nothing is permanent. And reminding me always, every single day, life is fleeting and precious. This is what reminds us to be in the present moment, because again, we might not have this again. This might not happen again. We might not see that person again. We might not have this opportunity again. So make the most of it. Um, Love it. Enjoy everything you can about this, because life, if we learn anything, we should know by now, it is fleeting. Life takes us in directions we could not have predicted, and we experience losses we did not know would happen that devastate us. But every moment that we get to have is precious. And so we need to learn to focus our awareness with joy and love on the precious moments we have, while we carry our grief about what has been lost from the past. And so I'm trying to remember not to waste a moment of life. And every time I find myself sinking into anger, I find myself, ruminating on how much I dislike certain people, or how upset I am about something that's happening, I stop and think, wait, is this the best use of this moment of my time to feel these things? They're valid feelings, they're real feelings that I have, and I don't deny them. I'm not trying to repress them or send them away, but I want to be able to hold them in a way that I make sure I'm actually also looking at, so so in the midst of things I don't like that are happening right now, how do I bring more love into this moment so that I can carry that pain and that discomfort more gracefully, with more love, and be a more positive force in the world? So that's what I'm talking about. And I don't want to let negative emotions and thoughts and feelings keep me from enjoying the sunshine today that's out there. I don't want it to stop me from going for a little walk through the garden and noticing the flowers that are blooming right now. I don't want it to prevent me from feeling all the joy and all the beauty and the love that's here right now in every moment in this life. And I this is another little story to tell you, and you may have heard this before. Let me get some water here. This is an example of kintsugi, I believe it's pronounced, which is a Japanese tradition of when a piece of pottery breaks, they never throw it away. They put it back together again and actually put gold in the cracks that remain, because they believe that when something has been broken, it's actually even more beautiful. And so you repair the brokenness with gold to highlight it and to show to everyone, look, this has been well used and loved. so loved that it broke at one point. And now look, we've put it together again, and it's even more beautiful than ever before. This really helped me when I was trying to reassemble my life in a way after the grief over my dad's death, and to realize like I need to bring these pieces together. I need to fill them with gold. I've been shattered in certain ways, but I don't want to stay shattered. I want to come back together and be a whole integrated person. And I'm going to fill all those broken places with as much gold as I possibly can, because those broken places are beautiful. And I love that I've been broken. I love that I got to learn through that experience and got to grow. So, again, the takeaway message from impermanence is remembering that nothing lasts and everything changes. And this is actually a positive message if you're in a dark time and when you're inside the cocoon and everything is dissolving, to remember even that doesn't last. It won't be forever. That's not going to be how things are forever. Everything is still going to change again. We've experienced great change to get where we are right now, but this isn't going to last because nothing does. Everything is still changing. It will continue to change. There's always hope for a positive change. There's always hope for a new possibility down the road. So this reminder, it doesn't last. It can be, on the one hand, is our reminder of impermanence and to be in the present moment, that we don't take anything for granted, but also to remember that even our pain and our discomfort and our sadness won't last forever because everything changes. So I always add this caveat: accept love, because love is the only thing on earth that lasts, as far as I know. The only thing that can outlast even death is the love that we experience. And for those of you who have had a close loved one die, you know this in your own heart, that the love that you feel for another person does not die when the physical body dies. Love carries on, love lasts, love is with us. And so that's what makes love really the most powerful message of all here, is that if you spend your time focusing on love and learning how to love better, including loving yourself, you will not waste your time. That will be a valuable practice, because love is what lasts. And so I want to go through these 7 lessons again, just to review them and kind of the takeaway points of the 7 lessons. And we'll go on from there to some of the tools that I'm recommending that you can use. And I'll talk a little more about those so that you have some practical takeaways. So again, I'm going to get water again. The first lesson was the lesson of suffering, and a reminder to embrace the dark times of life with curiosity, because sometimes that's the higher energy approach, the higher perspective to these dark times, to just be curious, like, I wonder why this is happening right now. I wonder what this is all about. What else is afoot? What else is going to come that this is happening right now? I'm so curious. And curiosity, it's a pretty high vibratory level in terms of energy. It's not a bad state to be in. Far better than being in despair. So if you can get yourself to a place of just being curious about things, that's helpful. And then love, of course. Love is what matters most. If there's nothing else you can do, carry with you a remembrance of, I need to bring as much love into my life as I can right now. I need to experience love, whatever it means for you, however it manifests in your life, whatever it brings to you. Have symbols in your life, in your home, of what love is to you. Carry them with you. Remind yourself of the power of love at all times. And next, the lesson of forgiveness and learning to let go of bitterness, which is the thing that will really pull you downward to that ground level view of things and keep you stuck there. if you can't begin to let go of it. The moment you do start letting go, it's powerful, and you'll feel it, and you'll feel lighter, and you'll feel yourself rising up. Next is the lesson of presence and learning how to be in the present moment and focusing on the present moment, and just finding new joys wherever they are, and enjoying the smallest, tiniest things in life, whatever comes to you. Maybe it's the tiniest flower in the garden that you look at and see the beauty in it, or just the smile on a stranger's face who happens to glance over at you. Um, when you can find those tiny joys in life, they actually end up building on each other. The joy accumulates, and you feel more and more of it when you can experience those tiny new joys. And the idea of purpose, remembering that life is a classroom that's going to bring you all kinds of opportunities to learn new things. And learning may be the goal of just being here. For me, I decided a long time ago it was about love and how to love. And if you can, if you figure out what your lesson is, you can learn from that. But that all of these lessons come to us to help us grow in consciousness, and that's far more important than anything on the ground level that we accomplish. It's more important to grow ourselves in consciousness and to grow spiritually than to accomplish things and make money and acquire material possessions, though all of that is fine, and all of that is part of our path as well, and part of what we learn from. But that from the higher perspective, learning as life brings you opportunities in this classroom, learning and growing is the most important part of that. And then the lesson of surrender, remembering to go with the flow as much as possible, to make space for something new to happen. And again, a reminder that I'm not talking about laying down and being a doormat and letting bad people walk over you. I'm not talking about that, even though that word, to even describe people as bad, I don't normally do that. But to um, surrender means surrender in love and stand up when something hateful and hurtful is happening and you are in a position where you could make a difference with your love, the power of your love. Go out and make a difference where you can, out of love, not out of anger yourself. That's how we actually can change the vibration of our whole society around us, if we're always bringing love and acting out of love. Um, and then the last lesson of impermanence, remembering that nothing lasts and everything changes, and cherish even the broken parts of life, the broken things that happen. It's all really woven into the beauty of this existence here on planet Earth. And so even cherish the fact that impermanence exists, that nothing lasts and everything changes, means that each moment is that much more precious because it's not going to last forever. It's special. We have to enjoy it right now while it's here for us. So those are the 7 lessons again. And I'll talk a little bit about a general strategy right now as we're trying to figure out how to be on the wisdom path and not dissolve away into the lower level thinking that's happening all around us, and not dissolve into anger or hatred. Is to, first of all, in your own life, be open to what life is bringing you, and don't waste time resisting it or being full of anger and hatred, because that will sap your energy. So be open to saying, okay, this is what is, this is what's happening right now. I'm going forward. This is what life gave me to deal with. This is what I have right now. Um, and so don't try to stop the waves. Remember, the waves are there, they're coming no matter what. And then remember to prepare for the big changes of life. And you might be in a place in your life right now where you feel like things are going well. you feel healthy, you have what you need. But remember that life, everything always changes, and life has a way of bringing us challenges. We will experience sickness, we will experience loss, there will be transitions, we will move, we will lose things we care about, we will lose people we care about, we will age, our bodies will age, and we will experience changes in our body. All of these things, all these changes will happen. It's part of life. It's built in to life, to this physical existence. And we need to prepare ourselves from the sense that we acknowledge this can and will happen to us. And maybe we make some preparations for what will I do if this happens. Um, what's my support network? What have I set up around me that will be helpful to me when some of these changes of life come my way? How can I be better prepared for them? And for me, it's primarily contemplating it and just thinking about it, and being open to ideas like, oh, it really makes sense, I should fill out my paperwork. I should fill out my advanced care planning so that I'm ready for that if something happens, and my forms are there for my family if they need them, things like that. Um, Make a daily practice of contemplating the reality that nothing lasts, life is impermanent. Cultivate tools and practices that help you through the difficult times. And I'm sure you all already do this. I'm sure that if you're on this call, you already have a spiritual life and have spiritual practices. They're so important. All the practices that you do when things are going well are going to sustain you when there's a challenging time. So don't underestimate the power of everything that you do. And maybe this is a time when you ramp it up a little bit and add an extra practice or expand your practice, because this is how we shore up our foundation and keep ourselves strong. And this is where our power will come from when we're facing difficulties and challenges. And then I want to talk about practicing the big picture view, the galaxy view, I call it, or the view from the penthouse. And really, how do we shift our view a little more to the penthouse view from the ground floor view? And it's this idea of, can you take the elevator up and get up to the highest level at times? And how quickly can you do that? As we grow spiritually, Carolyn May says, well, what we're actually doing is we're ascending each floor in the apartment building, to carry on this analogy further. So we get a new, slightly higher consciousness, and we move up a floor or two floors, and suddenly we're seeing a different view from those floors as well. But it's from the penthouse view, when we kind of have a more non-dual consciousness and higher consciousness, that we really can see a different perspective. But along the way, we keep growing, we keep it moving up one floor at a time to get higher and higher. And so all of our practices are going to help us do that and raise our own consciousness to these higher levels. And just remember, anytime we find ourselves caught up in ego or in our lower self, if we're feeling lots of negative emotions and thoughts, that's a sign that we're on the ground floor. And maybe we got trapped there. Maybe we got stuck and didn't even realize it. Maybe something got triggered in us from the past that held us back at that point. And we need to figure out how we can keep ourselves moving upward. So when we talk about the big picture view and or the galaxy view and getting there, part of what we're doing as we do our spiritual practices, we're actually rewiring the brain. And it's important to know this about our the neurochemistry of our brain, is that our brain has a bias toward negativity, because our brains are primitive structures and they are designed to protect us from danger. So the brain is set up to be aware of things that are frightening, that are possibly harmful, of, again, anger, hatred, fear. The brain gravitates toward that negativity. And this is why in our society, the posts on Instagram and TikTok that get the most likes often are ones that heighten fear, anger, or greed, that heighten negative emotions, because our brains gravitate to it. We're fixated on it. I need to know about all these negative things because that's how I can protect myself from danger. And that's just the nature of our primitive brains and how they work. So we're wired that way, to focus on the negative. But the good news is we have neuroplasticity and we can rewire our brains. We can create new synapses. We can create new pathways that help us rise above those old primitive pathways. So, this is why it takes some time in spiritual practice in order to rise above and get to the big picture view, to get to higher consciousness, because all the programming of the brain is toward these more negative emotions and negative states. And uh, Rick Hansen, who's a neuroscientist who talks a lot about this concept, said that it takes 10 positive experiences to override one negative experience. This is the challenge we face when we're trying to practice forgiveness, because we have to forgive we have to forgive 10 times for one negative experience in order to move the needle. So think about it. It's why our spiritual practice is so important, because we're trying to overcome the negative wiring that we were born with, that's just part of our brain structure, in addition to societal programming that we have all received and conditioning we've received over life. So when we want to rewire our brains, the very first thing I'm going to emphasize again is forgiveness, because forgiveness, holding on to negativity, that is the thing that disempowers people the most and keeps us stuck at lower levels. The more we can practice forgiveness, the more we can let things, personal things, roll off us a little bit and not hang on and cling to old bad feelings and negative histories, the more we're able to free up our energy, which is what lets us keep moving up in consciousness. So forgiveness is so important and so essential. And don't forget it. And remember that it's the ego that dislikes forgiveness and that says it doesn't make sense. It's our lower consciousness and lower thinking that tells us that, and we have to override it and overcome that by thinking, I don't care, I'm going to forgive, I want to forgive, and make that a daily practice. The next is the power of gratitude, because gratitude is just such an amazing force in our lives that actually the vibrational energy behind gratitude is so powerful. It can really lift us up pretty quickly to a higher level of consciousness. And yet we have to intentionally practice gratitude, because it's not built into our brains. It's not part of our primitive brain to experience gratitude. We're adding it on. We're teaching and training our minds to be in a state of gratitude and think of things we are thankful for. So, gratitude, I know it's used all the time. I hear it tossed around all the time to have a gratitude journal and a gratitude practice, but it truly is one of the most powerful things we can do. Third is to find our way to equanimity. And this is what mindfulness is about, our meditation practices or yoga, whatever we do to create a sense of calmness within us. But calmness, being in a calm state, is the place from which we can look at what's happening around us in the world and maximize our creativity and our brain power to help us think of things we might do to make a difference. We need to be in a calm state in order to do that. So we have to learn how to work with our own anxiety and rise above it. And I say we have to rise above our own fear of death, our own fear of loss and the things that can happen to us. We have to learn how to rise above that, how to coexist with those feelings, but rise above them to this place of equanimity that already exists within us. We just have to train ourselves to get to that place more frequently. And I'm guessing that all of you have practices and you probably do exist in that place of equanimity. And then the fourth really powerful tool is just kindness, a simple act of kindness. can make a huge difference. That quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, if you touch one thing, you've touched everything. And that the more you bring a drop of kindness wherever you go, to other people, to other situations, you are powerfully going to be changing the world around you, and also changing and reinforcing yourself, your own perspective, your own mindset. A friend of mine just told me the other day, she was at a shopping mall that had a large, huge parking garage, and she came across a woman who couldn't find her car, who was very distraught and upset and frightened. And she stopped for a moment and said, "I will help you," to the woman, and actually found someone who could drive the woman around and help her get back to her car. It was a tiny gesture. And what it really took was noticing there's someone in distress right now. Can I do anything to help them? And having enough creative thinking in the moment to think, what could I do that could help? And getting the inspiration. She's lost and she's scared and she doesn't know what to do, but I could help her. And she made a huge difference to that person by just stopping for a moment or two to reach out to her. Simple little acts of kindness. So again, with these four things to focus on for our tools, I'll talk more about some specific tools: forgiveness, gratitude, equanimity, and kindness. Um, and I'll go through each one of these. It's just one little practice I have to recommend for each one of these tools, and you may have your own practices, but a journaling practice for forgiveness that I find really powerful is start writing down things that you are aware you're holding on to blame and judgment for, toward anyone, yourself or any other person. And they may be hard things that maybe you've worked on it a lot and it's hard to get over, but start writing them down and choose just one situation at a time to work on. Maybe don't choose the hardest thing in your life that's ever happened, the hardest thing to forgive. Choose the low hanging fruit of something that you might be able to make progress on fairly quickly. And then you can use, I call this the 4-view forgiveness process, is that you start with a third person view where you just write out the story of what happened. And it's as if you were a newspaper reporter. You're just focusing on the facts without emotion or blame. This happened and that happened. They said this, I said that, I did this, they did that. Simple, just the details and the facts. Then you take the second person view of the other person involved in this particular incident. And to the best of your ability, you tell the story of what happened from the perspective of that person. What did they think was happening? And you have to get creative. You have to imagine, I wonder what they thought was happening. I wonder how they looked at it. You tell them how they might write this very same story. What did it seem like to them? Even if you think they were wrong in their perception, you still want to write down what you think they perceived in the situation. What were they feeling? What were they thinking about? Then you write your first person story of what happened. You tell the story from your point of view, but not just about that one particular incident. You talk about, I got upset when my friend betrayed me, but I'm aware right now in this moment that she's not the first person to betray me, that I actually felt betrayed several years before that by another person that I never got over. And you start to tie in from other stories and other things that have happened in the past, threads that are feeding into this particular incident. Why was this so intense? Maybe because I have a history with this sort of thing, maybe because it's happened before. And you begin to look for patterns and threads. Is there something from long ago, even childhood, that never healed? And that's why this situation was so intense for me. You start trying to look deep inside to see what has been hidden, what emotions have been hidden about this situation that you couldn't see before. The last view you write about, of course, is the galaxy view or the penthouse view or the big picture view. Um, Tell the story of what happened as if you were your own spiritual teacher or guide, as if you were someone far wiser than you, looking at this situation and describing to you what you might have been able to learn from what happened and what could be hidden within this situation that could help you grow in wisdom or compassion or love. And you ask your higher guide, your spiritual guide, which is your higher self, to tell you this. How can you look at this situation from this new perspective, the higher perspective, in order to find a way to heal it? So that was a long explanation, but that's the practice for forgiveness. On gratitude, there's tons of articles about gratitude practices that you can do, but most of them say recognize whatever positive thing is happening in the moment and start with your five senses. I know people who would say there's nothing positive in my life right now, I can't think of a single thing, and they can list off all the terrible things that have happened. But if you use your senses, what can you see? What can you hear? What can you smell? What can you taste right now? What can you touch that brings you something positive, the tiniest bit of positivity? Start there. Recognize anything positive you can find. Acknowledge if anyone else has played a role in this blessing that you're aware of right now, so that you can be grateful for another human being, because in fact the most powerful gratitude is when we're grateful for other people and for their presence in our lives. And then reflect on this experience in your journal or in a meditation. And even if you only spend a few minutes a day, you wake up and think, what am I grateful for right now? Sometimes it's just, I woke up, I'm breathing, I have lungs and they're still working. Thank God I'm still here. Maybe that's all it is, but the simplest gratitude practice every day can make a huge difference. And I love this quote from Melody Beatty: gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. I love that. The power of gratitude. Simple, simple, simple thing to do every day. As far as equanimity, we need to practice mortality awareness and being aware of the fact life is short and life is fleeting. And we start by using mindfulness to find our calm center. um, Start reflecting on the impermanence of physical existence, that nothing lasts and everything changes. I like this image of a spider's web is kind of the epitome of something impermanent. It may not even last, more than an hour or so. It'll get blown away by the wind, or someone will wipe it away, or an animal will step on it. And then the leaves, the autumn leaves, as they're changing and falling, nothing lasts, everything changes. But the addendum to that is to say, but right now, I'm okay. Right now, in this moment, nothing lasts, everything changes. I'll get sick one day, I'll die one day, I'll lose everything one day. But right now, I'm actually okay. I'm doing okay. I've got a roof over my head. I had a meal to eat. I'm okay. And that reminder of I'm okay is a really powerful thing to say to yourself. So let's see. There's also this lake and sky meditation. This is a simple one, but you probably have your own that you do, of imagining floating on a lake with a cloudy sky above and ripples in the water. And as you breathe out, you see the clouds continually dissolving away, and you see the water. As you breathe in, you see the ripples of the lake growing more and more still. And you're creating a stillness within you as you watch the water become still and the clouds dissipate in the sky. And that takes you into the stillness that already exists within you. Again, very simple, and you may have your own practice. Lastly, for kindness, this is a loving kindness blessing from the Buddhist tradition. It's also called metta. This is one version. There are many, many versions of the loving kindness blessing. This is one that I was taught a long time ago that I cherish. It means so much to me. I'll read it to you. May I be at peace. May my heart remain open. May I realize the beauty of my own true nature. May I be healed. May I be a source of healing for this world. I say this multiple times a day usually as it gets me through hard times. When I used to be a runner, I would always say it when I was running uphill and struggling and thinking, I just want to quit. I don't want to keep running up this hill. I would just say this over and over, and it powered me right up the hill. But you can also change the I to you and say it for another person. You can envision that person and send them a blessing. May you be at peace. May your heart remain open. May you realize the beauty of your own true nature. May you be healed. May you be a source of healing for this world. I love this so much. And I'm sure some of you have your own versions, but if you want to be kinder in the world, it's helpful to center on a blessing like this that reminds you of your own true nature, the beauty that you're carrying within you, and how it can potentially heal the world. So the last tool I wanted to offer is just, I want you to do this with me right now, a quick energy shift. If you're in a situation where you find yourself, you're just ready to say something you don't want to say or blow up at another person, or you're feeling overwhelmed or exhausted or frustrated, and you're feeling all of that ground level energy coming at you, and you need to shift your perspective right away. A quick practice. The first thing you do is put your hand on your heart. And interestingly, that simple action of putting your hand on your heart increases the release of oxytocin in your body. And oxytocin is the love hormone. It helps us relate to other people and feel connected. Then you take a deep breath with a prolonged exhale, longer than the inhale. So you maybe inhale for 6 counts and exhale for 8 counts. You can do that a couple of times. Take the deep breath with your hand on your heart. That activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the relaxation response that helps slow down your heartbeat, helps your body feel quieter and calmer. The third step is that you look up, you physically look up. If you're in a building, look up toward the ceiling. If you're outside, look at the sky and the clouds. Just tilt your head back and look up, because that act of looking up activates a second visual system in the brain. It causes the release of dopamine and serotonin, again, which are neurotransmitters that can help us feel more pleasure and feel calmer and feel more positive. Just looking up, it's amazing. So, hand on heart, deep breath, look up, and then you say to yourself, right now, I'm okay. I'm okay. All this stuff's going on all around me, but I'm actually okay. I'm safe. I'm in this place. I'm all right. I'm okay. And then you just say one thing that you're grateful for. And I'm so grateful that I can see the sky right now, so I can appreciate the clouds above me. So we can do it again. I'll walk us through it to do it again. Hand on heart. Take a deep breath with me with a prolonged exhale. Look up, appreciate what you're seeing up there. Think to yourself, right now, I'm actually okay. I'm okay. In this very moment, I am okay. And I am grateful. I'm just grateful to be here. And so, those 5 things, that linking them together, that simple practice, is a really quick way to shift you out of lower energy and negative emotions into a more positive state. And I just wanted to offer that to you so that you have something simple, because we're kind of being inundated right now everywhere we go. I mean, I'm hearing horns honking and people yelling, and I'm seeing visions of just anger and incivility around me in places that feel very hurtful and shocking at times. And we all need a practice like this that can help us get out of those lower energy emotions and into a higher place. So, my last message is that we can only get through these difficulties of life by caring for one another. And I thank you for being here and joining me here for this conversation. I hope it will be a conversation still for this talk, because uh, I feel your love. I am so grateful that you are here with me and have given me your time. Remember to always choose love over fear. And may you find blessings all along your way on your journey. These are my two books. The 7 Lessons for Living from the Dying was the earlier one that came out. The Journey from Ego to Soul is a sequel and contains the same 7 lessons with more of a perspective on the ego and the soul. And so I'm grateful to have a chance to tell you about those two books. And thank you once again for your kind attention and presence here. And I'm very grateful to you.
Well, thank you, Karen. That was great. And I just want to let people know who have not read your book that each lesson is actually even more than a chapter. Each lesson is a chapter which is broken down into many different aspects of that particular lesson. And at the end of each chapter, there are practice tools which include affirmations and journaling prompts. And I thought the journaling prompts were really good, really, really get the point across. And I wanted to also mention that one of the things that I really loved in the book were the stories of the dying people whom you were caring for. They were so poignant and so beautiful. And I wonder if you could share one. Anyone, maybe Lorraine with the hollyhocks, or Andy, or I don't know, anyone.
Oh gosh, yeah, they're also very dear to my heart. These patients. Hollyhock one is pretty long, so
Yeah.
um, one that I'll tell you is the story of Ralph, who was a
Mm.
man who was, well, back in the day we used to call them hobos. He lived on the railroad, really lived down by the railroad tracks. He took trains, he hopped on trains, freight trains, and followed them all around the country, lived in different places. He kind of always scavenged for whatever he needed, food. He'd just been a wanderer and a vagabond his whole life. And we ended up caring for him in hospice when he developed kidney cancer and went into renal failure. And he'd been seen at a railroad clinic, and they asked us if he didn't have any insurance. They asked us if we would take care of him at the very end of his life because he didn't have anyone. And they paid for a dingy little apartment for him to be in. And our hospice, as a volunteer project, took him on as our patient. And he was expected to live about 2 weeks. So we came in to care for him. And he was kind of this uncivilized man who'd never had anyone taking care of him in his life before. And we all learned so much from Ralph. And it turns out when I went to visit him, I mean, he was living in this little apartment with a mattress on the floor, one table, and one chair. And but he had a spiral notebook and a number 2 pencil. And he had me sit on top of the mattress, which was scary while he sat in the chair while we talked. But I looked around the room and I saw these pieces of spiral notebook paper taped to the walls. And I wondered what they were. And I got up and looked at them. And it turned out they were all drawings he had done just to pass the time. He wasn't used to being in a tiny confined apartment like this. And he had started drawing pictures of places he had seen when he was riding the rails, different countrysides, mountains, deserts, just things he remembered seeing. as he wrote on the rails. The drawings were amazing. I couldn't believe it. With a number two pencil, he had shading and details that I was really shocked to see. And I said, "Oh, you're an artist." I wondered, how long he had been drawing. And he said, "I've never drawn anything before in my life. I just started doing this right now." And our whole staff was amazed. Pretty soon, everyone was going to visit him because everyone wanted to see his drawings. And started dropping off little gifts like an actual sketch pad. And someone brought him, I think, some charcoal pencils or colored pencils, started bringing him different little tools he could use because he was clearly an artist who had never discovered his artistic talent. It was phenomenal. And every day there would be something new he would have to show us. We got so excited about going to visit him that we didn't even realize he was supposed to die in 2 weeks. And it was like 2 months later, we were still visiting him every day, and he seemed to be thriving. We redid his blood tests, and his kidney function had actually improved. And he ended up living an entire year when he was expected to die in 2 weeks. But it was because he found this beautiful creative talent within himself that he had never known existed before. And it was as if he created this entire beautiful purpose for his life in the 1 year, doing all these drawings and loving it and enjoying it. He got this second chance at how he lived his life for this last year, and we continued to support him. And at one point, he got a little bit of money from the railroad, a very small amount of money, and he found a catalog and he ordered a student desk. It was a child's actually art desk for drawing, but he thought it would work for him. He wanted a special desk where he could do his drawing. He ordered that desk and he was so proud that he had money. He was actually able to buy himself something that was special that related to his drawings. And he was just so thrilled. But before the desk arrived, he took a downturn suddenly, very rapidly. He suddenly got very, very sick again. His kidney function diminished. And the last time I saw him, I went to visit him, and that day the student desk got delivered. The box came with the desk. I knew that he was near the end and he probably could not use that desk, but he was so proud and thrilled that it actually came. He wanted me to put it right next to the mattress so he could touch the box and look at it. And I asked him if we could stay with him, if our staff could come and just be with him. I knew he was going to die fairly soon. And he said, "No, no." He said, "I've lived my whole life alone. I don't need anybody to be with me now." So he was with his student desk in his little apartment, and he died that night. And see, I'm still choked up after all these years. But the sweet ending to the story, we found out that he had no next of kin. No one claimed his body at the county morgue, and they cremated him, and his ashes were unclaimed, and they were going to be buried in what was called the pauper's grave, just with a bunch of other ashes of people who were unclaimed. So our staff decided we are his family. We've been taking care of him for a year. We're his family. So we claimed his ashes and we took them to this park, kind of a rustic park where he used to like to go fishing, he told us. And we buried his ashes near the river, and we had a little memorial ceremony for him. And a number of people from the apartment building where he lived that last year came to our memorial service. They all told stories about him. They had all gotten to know him and they all loved him. And so there was something so perfect about this man he had lived such a troubled life all of those years, and then found all this love and beauty and family and creativity and art in his last year. And we all got to a chance to partake in it and to be a part of it. And it was amazing. And so that's one of the stories that tells me there's hope for anyone at any place in their lives, whoever they are. There's always hope for transformation and for growth to occur.
Did anyone get any of his artwork?
No, because I guess one of his next door neighbor found him the next morning and called the funeral home that came and picked him up. And then we never heard who cleaned out there was hardly anything in the apartment. So we don't know. It's possible the next door neighbor took the drawings, or we don't know
Mm,
what happened to them. We never saw them again, which was sad. We would have cherished them if each of us could have had one, but
yeah, yeah, that would have been nice. Well, one of the things that struck me, the statement that you make in the book, we stand at the precipice between dissolution and transcendence. I thought that statement was written for right now, even though it was written quite a while ago. Can you elaborate on that? And do you see the precipice as a spiritual initiation, both individually and collectively?
I think that's a good way to describe the precipice, because
Mhm.
it feels to me like we could personally go down in a way. There's a lot of negativity around us and difficult things happening that could kind of tear us apart, but we also have the opportunity to keep growing through these times. And undoubtedly this dissolution is happening around us, like describing the caterpillar, um, that we can't really stop what's happening around us. But if we focus on how can I keep growing no matter what is happening, I think this is an opportunity. I think it is like a crossroads and an opportunity for us to really, really invest ourselves in our spiritual practices in order to keep growing.
Yeah, and looking at it from the galaxy view, right?
Yeah.
Reminds me of Albert Einstein, who said you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. Implies you have to look at it from a higher level of consciousness in order to see the whole picture. And of course, both levels are important, because as we see the whole picture, we also have to deal with the day-to-day mundane aspects of it, which can be, difficult. But seeing the whole picture helps us to just keep a little more perspective on the situation and not get completely mired in, the negativity and the anxiety and all of that.
Yes, exactly. And then sometimes you become aware that some people are trying to solve problems from that same level where they were created, and that's why it's not helping. It's not
Right.
working. We,
No.
we
Yeah.
need
And
to.
as you said earlier, whatever we do on that earth level, the garden level, to try to help the situation, whether it's volunteering, for a nonprofit, or whether it's, providing some kind of service, or whether it's joining a rally. It You point out in the book, and I've always felt this too, that how we do it is more important than what we do, because it needs to, if it's informed by, if we're coming from a place of fear or anger or frustration, um, it's it's going to add to the problem instead of taking away from it. But so, we talked about this a little bit before we started, but Andrew Harvey has this term, which I use a lot, sacred activism, which is activism that is informed by love. And one of the things you bring out so beautifully in your book over and over again is just the connecting with and trying to align with our higher self, or I forget how you put it, our authentic self, or our best self, and trying to manifest that increasingly every day in little ways and big ways. That is one of the things that I found really helpful. There were so many things in this book that um, are wonderful tools that you just can't cover in 90-minute
Yes.
talk, right? But authenticity and compassion and integrity and just a lot of consistency and harmony. And would you say something about one of the themes that was in the book, throughout the book, is connecting mind and heart? Would you talk a bit about that?
Yes, that's something I also kind of got from Carolyn Mays, because she talks a lot about how um, we can exist in our mind and be intellectual and think of rational ways of doing things. We sometimes come from our heart, where we're more emotional and we let emotions guide us, but we're most powerful when we can bring them together. We can bring the heart and mind together so that we have the rationality and practicality of the mind, coupled with this idealism and compassion and love from the heart. It makes our love that much more powerful when we try to move out into the world and figure out what to do. So we don't become overly sentimental from our hearts, but we have the mind guiding us as well. And we bring them together. And one of the things Carolyn talks about is that it's our, if you look at the chakras, it's our fifth chakra, the will, or our voice, that's in between the heart and the head. And it requires us to learn to use our voice. We have to learn how to speak out. And it's our voice and our willpower that helps connect the head and heart together. That just occurred to me as something that she says. But
Mm.
there's there are a lot of people functioning only from the head, coming up with rational thoughts and ideas, that don't have enough heart energy to look out for the vulnerable and to help take care of people who are needy. But sometimes if we only are looking from our heart, we may miss the important practical steps that have to be added in with it, if that makes sense. We need
Mhm.
to bring them together, and integrate them within ourselves. And I guess in some ways, it's also like integrating the higher view with the ground floor view where we live. Everything needs to be integrated because we are all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. Anybody have anything to ask or comment on? Leslie, unmute.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Karen, for spending this time sharing your thoughts. I know that um, your words of wisdom nourish me every week and help me on my own journey of aging and accepting and loving myself, and still finding ways to be in this world and try to make it a better place. I also work in end of life space in a hospice and find it very helpful. Anyway, I know you've been through a lot lately, and I just wanted to send love and blessings to you too.
Thank you. Thank you. Very sweet.
Mhm.
I appreciate that.
Anyone else? And when you talked about forgiveness, you also talked about the importance of forgiving yourself, forgiving myself, right? And also, in many cases, especially with the dying, forgiving God.
Mhm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, that's something that I found. People were sometimes harboring anger at God, if they believed in a God, or even at life itself. Like, why did this happen to me? How did it turn out this way? I've been a good person. I lived a good life. How could I possibly have this disease and be dying from this? and just a deep-seated anger that I devoted myself to practices that would benefit my belief in God or in life itself. And it all blew up in my face. Here I am, I'm dying, and I don't know why this happened to me. And so it occurred to me, I started asking people when we would talk about forgiveness, I would ask them if they had forgiven God or forgiven life for the fact that this is how things turned out. And so often, um, that was key for some people. They didn't even realize, like, they had a deep-seated anger as they tried to accept what was coming their way, a deep-seated anger about why it had happened to them and how unfair it felt to them.
Mhm. And how did you go about helping them with that?
Well, I guess that's where one of the things we talked about is that life isn't fair, and it doesn't necessarily uh, there's not necessarily like cause and effect. We can't necessarily change the course of things. Like, just because we ate a healthy diet doesn't mean that we will stay healthy right up until the very end. We do the things, we choose the things, the way we live our lives with the best knowledge we have, but there are no guarantees, and we can't be attached that there should be any certain outcome. Everyone will die at some point. And if we just accept that at the beginning, like, okay, no matter what I do, I'm going to die anyway, then we still do what we do. We make our choices for ourselves out because it's the most loving thing we could do, the way to live our lives, but we don't attach an expectation then that we're making a bargain or bartering that it will help our lives. So the thing we talked about is the need to sometimes forgive life itself and forgive God, that things happen to us in life that we wish wouldn't happen. And we would talk through how how to do that, how to approach that kind of just letting go, because this is real, this is reality and what's happening.
Yeah, what comes to mind also is that that slide that you showed that had the kind of collage where you well, from your dream, that wonderful dream that you had, to realize that it's all perfect, that everything, it would be wonderful if we could have, someone who is regretful or resentful or scared, could have that perspective at the end of their lives, that even things that have been hard, I can see a purpose for it,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
can see how it taught me this, or it made me more compassionate, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
That's the ideal.
It's my hope that as people are dying and maybe have a life review, they get a chance to see that, to see it
Yeah,
like, oh, aha, that's what
yeah.
these were about. That's what
I
it's,
truly believe that most of us will have that experience once we pass. We
yeah.
will see the perfection of it, I do think so. Did you must have witnessed some deathbed visions that people had. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, there were quite a few times when people would see loved ones in the room with them, that they would tell us about or describe, or we would hear them talking to a person and calling them by their name, and the family members would say, "Oh, well, that she means Uncle John. He died 2 years ago. She's talking to him." And so our staff was very well informed about those visions and to appreciate them and encourage people to talk about them, encourage family members to accept them and not see it as it's not a hallucination. This is something that's actually happening, because it was so powerful when it did happen.
Hmm.
And we
I
one
rem-
well, in the one of the women in the Hollyhock stories told me she had been very angry and bitter as she was dying, but she told me a man came into her room who was sitting in a chair at the end of the bed. She didn't seem to know him, but he was watching over her, and he took away all of her anger and all of her bitterness. He took it from
hmm.
her. That was her perspective. And she said it because she suddenly became like joyful and happy during the last few days of her lives, which she had been so bitter before. But she told me, "Oh, it's the man sitting in the chair at the end of the bed. Don't you see him?" And since he came, I all of this has gone away for me. So, oh, I loved hearing those kinds of stories. Really.
Yeah. Well, there's stories in every chapter, and they're so inspiring. They're so beautiful and heart opening. Yeah. Well, what's on the offing? Are you still writing? Are you?
Yes, I'm trying to working on writing a third book, kind of in the sequel from 7 Lessons for Living and the Ego. A third book called Love Over Fear. And so I'm working on that, but we'll see how it goes. Somehow I'm really slow at writing these days. So
And your podcasts are every week.
they for the most part this year I'm taking some Mondays off. So some weeks I skip and don't have one, but every 1 or 2 weeks I can say I have a new interview. So
and so you can just go to the podcast app and put your name in, and
yeah, you could enter my name, or just End of Life University is the name of the podcast, and it should come. Yeah, and you can subscribe on any app, and you can sign up. I have a website called eolupodcast.com. You can subscribe on that website, and then you'll get an email every time there's a new episode also. But podcast app also notifies you when there's a new episode.
Okay. And if there was one thing, one key message from your book for people to take away, what would it be?
I guess it would be, again, what we were talking about, that love is the most important thing. If we do nothing but return to that every day and remind ourselves of the importance of being in a state of love and feeding and nurturing the loving kindness that we feel inside, I think that's the most important thing we could do. I noticed that Nancy was raising her hand, but
oh, I'm so sorry, Nancy.
Oh, that's
okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just want to put in a big plug for the End of Life University website and the podcast. Karen has talked to the most interesting people. And Karen, you have the most wonderful way of drawing out from them the most useful information. And so I'm in Austin, Texas. I also took your course on how to teach end of life classes.
yes.
And I'm still doing that. I incorporated small group discussions into the classes based on what you suggested in that course. And I suggest to people in the classes, I say there's just 2 websites. And I tell them about the Conversation Project because there's so many useful tools out there in multiple languages, and it's also very useful. And Karen, I tell them about End of Life University, and I will be your Patreon friend forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Joanna, we're kind of out of time, but if you can ask quickly. Joanna, where is she? I don't see her.
I am. You don't
Oh,
see
there you are. Okay, I see you now.
I just want to say ditto because I've been following Karen for many years, and we've had death cafes here in Guatemala and done a lot of things because of your guidance. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. That's so good for
Great.
you here. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, Karen, for joining us this evening, and really appreciate your work and your presentation. And I encourage everyone to read this book, no matter how advanced you are on your spiritual path. There are so many tools and techniques and reminders that are just wonderful. And if you're a beginner, all the more reason, because it's so clear. Everything is very clear. And the stories are just just inspiring. So thank you, Karen, and
Thank you, Gloria.
God bless your work.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you all for attending. We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.